In this reading by Jill Reese, she mainly talked about the 4 C's, which are 4 ways to manage your classroom. Specifically, it was kind of geared towards a general music classroom, but later in the article, it talks about how all of these things can also be applied to like a middle school or a high school. Yeah. So the first C is commendation, um, which is basically one-on-one connections with your students. So if you know all of your students' names, um, giving them gentle reminders using their names will be more impactful instead of pointing at a student and being like, hey, you like stop running around. If you use their name, it'll kind of be more more of like a genuine, and it'll kind of not scare them, but like they'll be like, oh, Mrs. So and so told me to stop, so I should do that. Um, Also, there's a strategy called the ripple effect, which is making one comment that will influence the behavior of the rest of the class. So if a student, say her name is like Jill, um, and she's sitting quietly and like crisscross applesauce, you can be like, I love how Jill is sitting quietly. And then the students in the class will model their behavior because they also want to be complimented on how they're sitting, you know. Um, the second C is communication. So instead of kind of engaging in a power struggle if a student is misbehaving, you can give students a choice. So you could say something like, you can choose to stay here and follow directions, or you can go sit in the chair in the back and think about how you're feeling until you're ready to join us again. So when I did my observation last semester, I did a general music classroom, and the teacher had a chair in the back of the room that he would send students to if they were misbehaving. So he would just do like a quick like, Jackson, go to the back chair, like that, and the student would go to the back and sit there if he was misbehaving. And then he would sit there for either some of the class or the majority of the class. And once a couple activities had gone by, Mr. Offerdew, the teacher I observed, would say, all right, you can come join us again. And this usually works. And he told me during the observation, he was like, the chair is like the best thing in the world because they'll go sit down and like the distraction will be gone for the most of the class. And then when they come back, they won't want to go back to the chair, so they'll start behaving again. You could also do the 2-strike system that Reese talked about. She said the first strike would be like either a reminder or telling the student like, that's strike 1. And so strike 2 would be calling a parent home. So as soon as they know that they already had strike 1, then they wouldn't want to get strike 2. So that would kind of settle their behavior down a little bit. So because they wouldn't want the teacher to call their parent. You could also use a progress report for their behavior, so kind of like a checklist that you can send home to parents to let them know how their student is doing or how their child is doing. So it could have boxes that say behavior that they're doing well in, and then behavior that they need to address. And that can help with communication between parents and the teacher. The last C that she talked about, or no, sorry, the third one is consistency, which is creating rules and expectations for the class from the very first day. Reese talked about how she had 5 rules, which was enter quietly, participate with others, show respect for yourself, others, and materials, try your best, and exit quietly. And she said that at the end of the day, she would have her students line up and then look at the list, and they would go through each rule and see which one they did well on and which one they had to work on a little bit. And she also talked about transitions, which also kind of ties into content, which was the last C. So when I observed in the general music classroom, Mr. Offerdew would always greet the students with a ukulele, and then they would walk in like singing a song or something along those lines. And whenever they switched an activity, it would be like super fast. Not like so fast to the point where the students couldn't keep up, but fast enough to where there wasn't enough time for students to talk to each other or cause disruptions. So also having this also ties into C, content, the last C, which is having a solid lesson plan for your students, so there is no time to be distracted between activities.